The Los Angeles Lakers didn't just lose a few role players, they may have just erased the entire identity of a playoff team overnight. 5 of the Lakers' highest minute playoff contributors are gone. Jonathan Kuminga remains one of the NBA's biggest gambles, and now the biggest question isn't whether Luka Dončić can carry Los Angeles, it's whether this shocking rebuild is the beginning of another championship run or the fastest collapse in the Luka era.
Yeah, so first off, fascinating stat from our guy Stats Williams was that obviously there's an asterisk because Luka and Austin were hurt, but the top 5 minutes played guys from the Lakers playoffs are not back.
Yeah.
For a team that made the second round, that's really unheard of. So it's a full-on makeover. Mm-hmm. That's number one. I like the value that they got Mamushvili on. I like that and a lot of people in the league I've talked to like that contract and like that value as a Rui replacement.
Obviously, it's not done yet either, right? I mean, a wing we think is coming, whether that is via trade with Kuminga. I mean, PJ.
Yeah,
Washington,
I mean, if you can get
there.
Kuminga on a cheap contract, that's definitely an athleticism infusion. But I'll just point out about Kuminga. I think the reason you like Kuminga is you give him a big role and you hope he can produce. But I just want to point out that 2 teams in the last year have moved on from him, and you did not see any team go commit any significant resources to get him. Now, that does not mean he will not have a great year. I will just say to you, though, you just have to acknowledge and understand that there's a reason why he would be available for relative cheap.
But, look, he's 23 years old, Kuminga. To you guys' point, he's athletic. My biggest thing is that last year you find yourself having to manage the emotional highs and lows of a DeAndre Ayton, and it just seems like nobody's debating Kuminga's athleticism. They're sort of debating his attitude or his expectations of what he is to a team. And when guys don't understand their role, that becomes a pain in the ass and a distraction. So that would be, and tell me if I'm onto something here, Wendy, that to me would be like my biggest concern with a guy like Kuminga. Got the athleticism, and he's young, but is he a guy who could understand the role that he's supposed to play on a team and therefore fit in?
Well, you feel better having Kuminga at a couple million a year as opposed to having him at $25 million a year. So that's one thing that changes everything. That colors the way you're going to evaluate him. Absolutely. But look, the getting excited about Jonathan Kuminga has been a annual right now for 5 years. So that does not mean that he won't have a great year. I'm just telling you, for 5 years, I've listened to how Jonathan Kuminga is going to have a breakout season. Mm-hmm. And so I am just going to wait back and watch. And, if you're acquiring a guy, 2 weeks into July, there's a reason why you're acquiring him 2 weeks into July. Which is, by the way, what I said last year about DeAndre Ayton. Mm-hmm. 2 teams had punted on Ayton in the previous 2 years, and the team that had him was willing to pay him money to not have him there. And so when he came in, I felt it was a better, I think, what did they give him? $6 million, I think, 6 or 7 million.
6, 7.
6, 7.
Gotcha.
That value to get a player of that talent level for that monetary value was good work, but there's a reason why he was sitting out there and teams were moving on from him. So I would say the same thing about Kuminga. He has been traded and released, just like Ayton was traded and released twice in the past, 6 months. So just keep that in mind and keep that framed. But listen, if you're the Lakers, this is what you have to lean into. You have to lean into getting players that you think have high potential, that have low salaries. When you are invested in Luka, because we just had Brad Stevens say, and regardless of what you think about Brad Stevens' decision to trade Jaylen Brown, Brad Stevens has demonstrated to be very good at his job. And he said, I don't think it's a very good idea to have 70% of your salary cap taken up by 2 players who do very similar things. And that's essentially what the Lakers have with Reeves and Luka. That's essentially, They're slightly different, but they're the same type of player. And so to overcome that, you have to be very efficient on other parts of your roster. And if you can get Kuminga at a couple $1 million a year and he plays that role very well, that's what the Lakers can do. Not necessarily less guaranteed money, but maybe to stretch a new deal from 2 years to 3 years, because what the Cavs are trying to achieve is get enough money underneath the second apron that they can add LeBron potentially for more than the minimum. The idea of LeBron James coming to your team at $6 million or $4 million for the minimum is crazy great efficiency.
Yeah.
So,
no, that is wild.
Whatever, I think Harden is, Sham said, I think Donovan Mitchell is embracing the concept. I think James Harden is embracing the concept. And look, last year, LeBron did everything from play point guard to center for the Lakers.
Yes,
not in 2019, last year. So I would argue he could be plug and play on any roster.
Yeah, for sure.
And the Los Angeles Lakers, his hometown in LA. The Lakers, I think, are chasing some other free agents, but would have interest here. And keep an eye on some other teams as time develops.
Speaking of the Lakers, Rui Hachimura, he's staying in LA. Not with the Lakers. He's signing a 2-year, $28 million deal with the Clips. What does that mean for both LA teams, Wendy?
Nice value for the Clippers here. The market had dried up a little bit on Rui. They get him with nice value. He's averaged over 40% from three-point range each of the last 3 years. And I got to say, this creates a remarkable bit of trivia, Hannah, in that the Lakers lost the 5 highest minute players from their playoff roster last year. Obviously, Luka Dončić and Austin Reeves were out with injury, but their 5 highest guys who played into the second round will no longer be there.
That's crazy.
The Los Angeles Lakers didn't just lose a few role players. They may have erased the entire identity of a playoff team almost overnight. Think about this for a second. A team that fought its way into the Western Conference playoffs and reached the second round is now staring at one of the most dramatic roster transformations in recent NBA memory. The numbers tell the story. The 5 highest minute contributors from that playoff run are gone. Gone. Not 1. Not 2. 5. That almost never happens to a legitimate playoff team. This isn't a simple retool. This isn't adding one missing piece. This is a complete reconstruction around one undeniable reality. Everything now revolves around Luka Dončić. And that creates a question far bigger than free agency itself. Are the Lakers secretly building the next championship contender? Or are they creating the fastest collapse of the Luka era before it has truly begun? Because once you remove the players who built your playoff identity, you're betting everything on replacing chemistry with potential. And that is where this story becomes far more dangerous. But replacing experience isn't the biggest gamble the Lakers may be taking. The biggest gamble has a name. Jonathan Kuminga. Jonathan Kuminga might be the most fascinating and divisive name still connected to the Lakers. On paper, the upside is obvious. He's only 23 years old. He's explosive, athletic, powerful in transition. Exactly the kind of player Los Angeles has lacked around Luka. If the Lakers can land him on a low-cost contract, suddenly the risk looks incredibly attractive. High upside. Minimal financial commitment. That's exactly the type of move championship teams try to steal. But that's only one side of the story. The other side raises uncomfortable questions. For years, basketball fans have heard the same prediction. This is Jonathan Kuminga's breakout season. Again, and again, and again. Yet multiple organizations have ultimately decided to move on. Even more telling, no team rushed to invest major money in him. That doesn't automatically mean Kuminga can't become a star. Far from it. But smart front offices usually don't ignore elite talent without a reason. The debate has never been about athletic ability. It's been about consistency, decision-making, role acceptance, and perhaps most importantly, whether he's willing to become exactly what his team needs instead of what he believes he should be. That question could determine whether this gamble becomes brilliant Or another expensive distraction, because the Lakers have already walked down this road before. And another talented player serves as a warning. The comparison isn't perfect, but it is impossible to ignore. Last season, the Lakers found themselves managing the emotional highs and frustrating lows of DeAndre Ayton. The talent was obvious. The value looked attractive. Reports suggested Los Angeles paid roughly $6 to $7 million, a relatively modest figure for a player with Ayton's resume. At that price, many believed it was worth the gamble. But there was another truth that couldn't be ignored. Multiple teams had already moved on from him. Talent wasn't the question. Reliability was. That same warning now follows Kuminga. Elite physical tools alone don't win championships. Understanding your role does. Championship teams don't simply collect talented players. They collect players willing to sacrifice. And for a Lakers organization building around Luka, every rotation player must fit a very specific puzzle. One player chasing individual expectations can disrupt an entire locker room. That's why this decision carries so much weight, because none of these moves exist in isolation. They're all connected to one enormous financial reality. Building around Luka Dončić changes everything. Every contract matters. Every dollar matters. Every roster decision becomes magnified. The modern NBA is brutally unforgiving under the salary cap. Several executives around the league have openly discussed the danger of committing the overwhelming majority of payroll to just two players with overlapping offensive responsibilities. If too much money is concentrated at the top, the rest of the roster must dramatically outperform its contracts. That's why inexpensive, high-upside players become so valuable. If Kuminga delivers while earning only a fraction of what many expected, the Lakers could uncover one of the biggest bargains in basketball. If he doesn't, the margin for error around Luka becomes dangerously thin. That's the balancing act facing the front office. Not simply collecting talent, but maximizing value around a franchise centerpiece. And just when it seemed the offseason couldn't become any stranger, another move stunned both Los Angeles franchises. Then came another surprise. Rui Hachimura isn't staying with the Lakers. He's staying in Los Angeles. By joining the Clippers on a reported 2-year, $28 million deal. For the Clippers, that could prove to be outstanding value. Rui has shot over 40% from three-point range during each of the last 3 seasons. Reliable shooting. Solid size. Playoff experience. Meanwhile, the Lakers move even further away from the roster that carried them into the postseason. And that's what makes this offseason so extraordinary. The Lakers aren't simply replacing players, they're doubling down on a championship window. They're replacing an identity. Everything now depends on whether younger, cheaper talent can outperform expectations while Luka carries the weight of championship ambition. Some fans believe this aggressive reset is exactly what the franchise needed. Others see warning signs everywhere. One thing is beyond debate. Few teams that reach the second round completely lose their 5 biggest playoff minute contributors and immediately become stronger. The gamble has officially begun. Now the basketball world waits to discover whether this is the first chapter of another Lakers championship story, or the beginning of one of the NBA's most painful experiments.
Yo, mic check 1 to 2, -1, -2. Game over for this video, folks. Smash that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to stay in the huddle for more. This is NFL Madness, bringing the heat and signing out.